The year is 1900, and in the English countryside, a great house is putting itself to bed from the park. In the last of the light, you would see it the way visitors always see it. 3 stories of golden stone, 40 windows catching the sunset, lawns running down to a lake the color of pewter. A lamp comes on in the drawing room, then another in the library, and if you looked lower below the balustrade, half beneath the ground, you would see another row of windows, smaller and brighter and busier, where the real evening is only beginning. The house above is thinking about sleep. The house below is thinking about tomorrow. This is history for sleep. Tonight we go through the green baize door, the padded door that separates the family's house from the servant's house inside it, and we stay below stairs from dusk until the morning trays go up. It is a world with its own government and its own geography. The butler locking the silver away by lantern light, the housemaids banking 20 fires so that not one goes out before dawn, the lamp room with its rows of little flames, the bells that can summon someone from 3 floors away by a wire and a spring, the nurse awake in the night nursery, and the scullery maid, 13 years old, first up in the whole house, kneeling at the cold range at 5 in the morning to strike the day's first match. Nothing frightening will happen tonight. Nothing frightening is allowed to happen. That is precisely what all these people are for. The family upstairs will sleep from midnight until 9 and never once wonder how the house stayed warm, lit, locked, and fed around them. You are invited to sleep exactly as they did, carelessly, expensively, without a single duty, while an entire quiet nation below stairs keeps the night on your behalf. If you are lying down, you have already taken up your position. Let the house grow quiet above you. Someone else has the keys, someone else is watching the fires, and the first bell will not ring for you. Let us begin at 9 o'clock in the evening, at the foot of the servants' stairs, where the day is being folded up and put away. Every great house is really 2 houses, wearing one roof, and the trick of it, the deep Victorian trick, is that one of them is nearly invisible. The visible house is the one in the photographs, the hall with its portraits, the long gallery, the drawing room where a fire has burned since 4 o'clock for the pleasure of 5 people. The invisible house is wrapped around and underneath it, like the workings of a clock behind a painted face. Below ground, kitchen, scullery, larders, cellars, the servants' hall, the butler's pantry, the housekeeper's room. Above, tucked under the roof leads where the ceilings slope, the long attic corridors of servants' bedrooms. And running between, hidden in the thickness of the walls, the service stairs, plain wooden stairs, scrubbed white, that a housemaid can climb from the basement to the attics without once being seen by the people she serves. The 2 houses even keep different time. Upstairs the day begins at 9 with tea. Downstairs it began at 5. Upstairs the day ends at midnight, with a candle carried up the great staircase. Downstairs it ends when the work does, and the work ends when the family sleeps. Never before. A footman's day, on a night with a dinner party, can run 19 hours. The 2 houses meet at doorways, at bells, at trays held at exactly the right height, and each is, in its way, entirely dependent on pretending the other is not quite there. How many people live in the invisible house? At a place this size, perhaps 25 indoors, butler, housekeeper, cook, 2 footmen, half a dozen housemaids, kitchen maids, scullery maid, ladies' maids, valet, nurse and nursery maid, hall boy, odd man, and as many again outside, in stables and gardens and gate lodges. 50 people, that is, to keep 5 in comfort. 10 pairs of hands for every pair that never lifts anything heavier than a teacup. The arithmetic sounds like a scandal, and to modern ears it partly is one. But tonight we are not here to audit the house. We are here to watch it work because, as a piece of machinery, a great house at night is one of the most beautiful things the century ever built. A machine made entirely of people, running in the dark almost silently on tea and habit and pride. And the door between the two houses, the frontier itself, deserves a chapter of its own. At the end of the main corridor, where the marble floor gives way to stone flags, there is a door unlike any other door in the house. It has no handle on show, only a brass push plate. It is padded and covered both sides in green baize, the same soft wool cloth that lines billiard tables and silver chests, tacked down with rows of brass studs. It swings both ways on its hinges and closes itself behind you with a sound like a held breath. Not a click, not a bang, a hush. The padding is not decoration. Green baize swallows sound, and sound is the whole point. On one side of this door, the family's house must be quiet. No clatter of pans, no ring of servants' voices, no thunder of boots on stairs. On the other side, the working house must be free to be loud. The door is a muffler between the two, an instrument for keeping one world inaudible to the other, hung on hinges. The Victorians, who invented very little furniture without a moral attached, would tell you it also kept cooking smells out of the drawing room, but what it truly kept apart was knowledge. Upstairs need not know how the miracle was done. Downstairs need not be heard doing it. Passing through it, the change is total and immediate. Carpet becomes stone, wallpaper becomes whitewash. The air changes, beeswax and wood smoke on one side. On the other, bread, laundry soap, blacklead, and the ghost of 10,000 dinners. Even the light changes upstairs. The lamps wear silk shades. Down here they burn bare and bright, because down here light is a tool, not an atmosphere. Everyone in the house crosses this frontier a little differently. The footman straightens as he goes up, settling his shoulders into the livery, becoming taller and smoother and slower. Coming down he loosens, becomes quick and plain again, a young man from a village with aching feet. The housemaid times her crossings like a smuggler, by the family's habits, so as never to be seen. The butler alone passes through it without changing at all. He is the same personage on both sides, which is a large part of what he is paid for. And tonight, a dozen more times before dawn, the door will hush open and hush shut as the invisible house tends the visible one, each crossing a small errand of warmth or light or safety, delivered on soft soles, unheard. Before we follow the night any deeper, it is worth asking how the invisible house fills its rooms, because nobody is born below stairs, and every person we will meet tonight arrived here once, 13 years old, standing in the servants' entrance with a tin trunk and a thumping heart. They come from the cottages, from the estate's own villages, from farms glad of one less mouth in winter, from families where service is the family trade. The housekeeper's mother was a housekeeper. The coachman's father drove the old master. A place in a great house is not taken lightly and not got easily. A girl needs a character, the written reference from her last employer, or, for a first place, from the vicar's wife. And a character is a document of real power, guarded like a banknote, for without one there is no next place, and the whole profession runs on this fragile paper currency of reputation. Situations are found through the quiet networks. The housekeeper writes to her sister housekeeper 2 counties off. The butler knows a butler. The vicar's wife knows a girl who is steady. For the rest, there are the register offices in the market towns and the mucklamas hiring fairs older than the houses themselves, where country boys stand with a wisp of straw in the hatband to show their trade. The new girl starts at the very bottom scullery, or third housemaid at £8 a year, all found, bed, board, beer, uniform partly provided, and the year's wages paid half yearly into a hand that has rarely held a whole sovereign. All found is the phrase that decides mothers. A daughter in service is fed, housed, doctored after a fashion, and the word the mothers use placed inside the walls, under the keys, within the rules. The rules are many, and the liberty is small. 1 afternoon off a week if the work allows, church on Sunday, followers, that is, sweethearts strictly forbidden and universally had. And yet the ladder is real, and everyone on it can recite it. Scullery maid to kitchen maid to cook, and a cook in a great house commands her own kingdom and her own wages, and retires, if she is wise, to a lodging house of her own. Hall boy to footman to under butler to butler, and a butler is a personage, consulted by his master, feared by the tradesmen, saluted in the village. The house takes children and returns, 20 years on, professionals of the first competence, or it returns them sooner, married from its own servants' hall, which is the other career, and the housekeeper keeps a drawer of small wedding presents against the regular occasions. Hard terms, real prospects, no illusions on either side. That is the bargain the tin trunk carries up the attic stairs, and tonight all 25 of its signatories are asleep or on watch around us. Upstairs, dinner is ending, and dinner ending is itself a piece of choreography performed nightly that nobody upstairs has ever consciously watched. It is a quiet family night. 5 at table, 4 courses, no guests. Even so, the machinery beneath the meal has been running since 6. The food came up from the kitchen 90 feet away down the service corridor, through the baize door, up the back stairs, carried in covered dishes at a walk so brisk it is nearly a run, so that soup poured boiling in the kitchen arrives merely hot at the table, which is the difference between an adequate house and a good one. The first footman has stood behind the meal all evening in white gloves, changing plates with the silent precision of a card sharp. The butler has poured the wine himself, from decanters he filled in the cellar this afternoon, and has spent the meal doing what butlers principally do, which is to stand quite still and notice everything. Now the cloth is drawn, the ladies rise and withdraw. The master sits a quarter hour over port he barely touches, because the ceremony matters more than the wine. And below, the tide of the meal comes home again, trays of plates and glasses and silver descending to the scullery, where a kitchen maid stands at a lead-lined sink with soda and soap and hot water from the great copper, working through them in the fixed and lawful order, glass first, while the water is cleanest, then silver, then china, then, last of all, pots. The silver does not stay with her. Forks and spoons go to the butler's pantry to be counted, for silver is counted every single night, piece by piece, not because anyone is suspected, but because counting is how a house this size thinks. In the drawing-room, coffee. In the kitchen, the cook, a personage fully as grand below stairs as her mistress is above, takes off her working apron, surveys her cleared tables, and pronounces the day's cooking finished. Tomorrow's bread sponge is already set to rise under a cloth. The range is raked, fed, and shut down to a red glow that will hold until morning. By 10 o'clock the kitchen, which has roared like a foundry since dawn, has gone soft and amber and ticking, and the last service of the day is done. Except that in a great house the last service is never quite done. It only changes shape and moves upstairs and gets quieter. While the grown offices of the house perform their evening rituals, the smallest male member of the staff is conducting his own, and the hall boy's evening is the whole profession in miniature. Done at the age of 11, the hall boy, so called because he sleeps in the old houses, on a folding bed in the servants' hall itself, last to bed of the lower servants and first defender of the basement door, is the bottom rung of the men's ladder, as the scullery maid is of the women's. His day is everyone's errands, coal to every basement fire, boots and cans, the answering of the area door, the fetching of the men's beer, the carrying of everything that 25 superiors decline to carry. And his evening belongs to 2 kingdoms in the basement's furthest corner, the boot room and the knife room. The boot room first. Outside every bedroom door upstairs, tonight as every night, boots and shoes wait in pairs. The master's, her ladyship's walking boots, the children's, the visiting shoes of the lady's maid's mistress, and the hall boy has gathered them all on his last round, a dozen pairs in a wooden carrier, down the back stairs to his bench. There, by one candle, he does what he does best in the world so far, blacking mixed on a tile, the mud brushed off with the hard brush, the blacking worked in with the middle brush, the shine raised with the soft brush, and finished with a bone and an old velvet pad until toe caps hold the candle flame in them like dark water. Spit is involved at the proper moment. Every boot boy in England would swear to it, and no manual will print it. The finished pairs go back in the carrier in strict floor order, ready to travel upstairs before 6, so that every sleeper wakes to find yesterday's mud abolished, as if the house digested it in the night. Then the knives, for in a house that counts its silver nightly, the steel knives are cleaned nightly too, and this is the one job where the sentry has sent the hall boy a machine. The knife machine stands on his bench like a fat drum on legs, knives slotted in around the rim, emery powder within, a crank handle without. He turns, the drum whirs its gritty music, and the blades come out bright a minute a load, where his predecessors buffed each blade by hand on a board. It is the only machine below stairs he is allowed to command, and he commands it with the seriousness of an engine driver, which in his private evening imaginings, on the strength of our last episode's kind of dreaming, he occasionally is. By 9:30 his bench is clean, his boots are ranked, his knives are racked, and he has eaten his supper at the foot of the long table in the hall that is also his bedroom. The folding bed comes out from its cupboard, the last lamp but the passage lamp goes down, and the smallest servant of the great house lies listening to the butler's keys going round the doors above him. The sound, though he would not put it this way, of the whole enormous fortress being locked with him inside it, employed, fed, and futured, 11 years old, guarding the basement of England from the front line of his folding bed. He is asleep in 90 seconds. He has earned it since 6:30, but before the night watch begins, the invisible house sits down to its own dinner, and the servants' hall at supper is one of the great unphotographed rooms of the century. It is a long room with a long scrubbed table, benches down the sides and 2 proper chairs at the ends. The walls are whitewashed, hung with a print of the Queen, a row of pewter that nobody uses, and the bells board of which more later. The food is plain and there is plenty of it. Tonight, mutton from upstairs' saddle, potatoes, bread, cheese and beer, drawn from the servant's own cask. For beer money and beer are among the settled rights of service, argued over at hiring and defended like a border. And the room has an order as strict as any dining room in England, stricter, the old servants would say, and prouder. The butler sits at one end, the housekeeper at the other. Rank descends from them seat by seat. Lady's maid, valet, first footman, second, the housemaids in their numbered order, down to the hall boy, who is 11, eats like a stove, and is nearest the door because he answers it. Upper servants are spoken to as Mr. and Mrs. regardless of marriage. The cook is Mrs. to everyone, including the kitchen cat, and when the main course is done, the upper servants rise in procession and withdraw to the housekeeper's room for their pudding and their tea, exactly as the ladies withdrew upstairs an hour ago. The house below stairs is not a parody of the house above. It is a mirror, polished daily, and its rituals are held with, if anything, more conviction. Around the table, the day is talked over in the house's own dialect. Which bell rang all afternoon and why? The state of the hall floor after the rain. The undergardener who is courting the second housemaid, slowly by way of vegetables left at the kitchen door. The talk is unhurried and territorial and warm. The talk of people who work 14 hours together and have chosen sensibly to like each other. This hall is their parliament, their club, their village green. Most of them came into service at 13 or 14 from cottages where supper was bread and dripping. Here there is meat daily, a bed with blankets, wages banked, and a ladder scullery to kitchen maid to cook, hall boy to footman to butler, that a clever child can climb to the very top of a profession. It is hard service and small liberty. It is also, for many at this table, the securest life on offer in their England, and they know both things at once, the way one knows the two sides of a coin. At 9:30 the hall empties. Those with early mornings, which is nearly everyone, go up the attic stairs with their candles, and the house enters the hours this episode is really about, the hours when almost everyone is asleep, and the few who are not begin their rounds. At 10 o'clock the butler takes up a chamber candlestick and a ring of keys, and begins the oldest ritual of the male side of service, locking up. He starts low. The plate room first, a windowless strong closet off his pantry, lined with green baize shelves, where the house silver lives, the candelabra, the salvers, the epergne that takes 2 men to lift, the chests of flatware in their felt beds. The everyday pieces, counted an hour ago, are laid in their drawers. The great pieces sleep under wash leather covers like patients. He counts nothing now counting is done, but he looks, because looking is the ritual, and then the door shuts with a sound only a plate room door makes, a thick soft clunk of iron in oak, and the key turns twice. Then the wine cellar, down a further stair, where his candle lantern makes the bin ends glitter. Port laid down the year the eldest son was born, claret resting on its way to being ready a decade hence. He enters the day's bottles in the cellar book by lantern light, pencils a note against a bin that is running low, and locks the gate, for the cellar has a gate, like a small gaol for very well-behaved prisoners. Then up and around, and the house closes under his hands door by door. Shutters folded across the tall windows and barred with iron, the garden door, the gun-room door, the side passages, the great front door last of all, its bolts running home top and bottom with a doubled thud that carries faintly up the staircase and means to anyone half asleep above precisely what a harbour chain means to a ship. As he goes, he gathers stray lamps, snuffs candles, tries handles that are always locked anyway. His candle travels the dark rooms like a small planet, finding the furniture out one piece at a time, the shrouded harp, the card table, the portraits looking down at him looking up. The butler has done this circuit in this house for 19 years. He could do it blind, and in a sense he does, for the candle is more habit than necessity. If he has opinions about the family he serves, and 19 years of standing quite still and noticing everything produce opinions, they go where they have always gone, into the same locked room as the silver, to be polished privately and never shown. At 11 he returns to his pantry, sets the keys in their drawer, and allows himself the one glass of the day, poured from a bottle that is his own and not the cellar's, and drinks it standing in candlelight, in a silence he has personally manufactured, the whole vast house above him shut, barred, counted, and safe. The butler's pantry deserves a visit of its own while its owner finishes his rounds, for pantry is one of the great understatements of the English language. This is not a cupboard. It is an office, a workshop, a strong-room antechamber, and a small sovereign state. The room commands the basement strategically, beside the plate room, over which the butler sleeps in some houses, literally, a bed made up nightly across the strong-room door, though our butler trusts his locks, and near the foot of the back stairs, where all traffic passes his window. Within, a desk with the cellar book and the wine ledgers, the safe for the everyday plate, a long baize-topped workbench, and the tools of the silver trade ranked like surgery plate powder and rouge, brushes for chasing, wash leathers, the grey linen gloves that handle finished work, for the final enemy of silver is the human thumb. Silver is the craft at the heart of the office. Cleaning great silver is slow chemistry, and slower patience. The powder mixed to a cream, worked in small circles, brought off with brush and leather until the metal shows that particular deep wet light that only hand-polished plate possesses, a glow, not a glitter, that any butler can tell from shop shine across a dining room. The footman do the daily flatware in the pantry under his eye, aprons on, sleeves rolled, an hour every morning at the bench in a silence broken by verdicts. More rouge, less haste. That fork again. The great pieces the butler keeps to himself, on winter afternoons, working alone at the bench with the calm of a man restoring paintings. The Eperdney alone is an afternoon. Wine is the other craft. Decanting is performed here nightly against a candle flame, the bottle tilted slow, the candle behind the neck showing the first shadow of sediment, the pour arrested at exactly the right despairing moment, a skill of the eye and wrist that takes years and cannot be explained, only stood next to. The pantry smells of it all faintly and permanently, plate, powder, wax, wine, and tea for the caddy here is the butler's own, a gift of the old master, and the pantry brews the best cup in the house and admits it to nobody. It is 11 now, and the pantry is shut and dark, its silver counted, its books ruled off. On the bench under a cloth, tomorrow's flatware waits for the footman's morning hour. The room holds its smells and its authority all night, like a magistrate's court after hours, and the house's valuables sleep next door under 2 locks, an oak door, and the professional honor of the man now climbing the back stairs with his candle, whose whole career is the reason nobody upstairs has ever once wondered whether they are safe. While the butler locks the house, the housemaids are performing the night's most delicate piece of housekeeping, putting 20 fires to bed without letting a single one die. A great house in 1900 is heated almost entirely by coal grates, 1 to a room, sometimes 2, and a fire like a lamp or a horse cannot simply be left. Walk the bedroom floor with the head housemaid now as the family sits over coffee below. In each room she kneels at the grate with the fire nearly burned through and rebuilds it for the dark hours, the live coals gathered gently to the center, a layer of fresh coal placed, not poured, for noise is forbidden up here, and then over it all, a dressing of damp small coal and ash, patted down like a blanket. Banking, it is called. Done right, the fire neither blazes nor dies, but smoulders steadily at the core all night, a slow red heart under a grey quilt. And in the morning 1 thrust of the poker and a breath of the bellows will wake it roaring, in a room that never once went cold. It is a real skill, learned kneeling, judged by results that everyone feels and no one sees. Bank too heavy, and the fire smothers by 2 o'clock. The room chills, the mistress wakes cold and says nothing, and the housekeeper hears about it anyway, by the mysterious telegraphy of great houses. Bank too light, and the coals burn through by midnight waste, which is the other deadly sin. The head housemaid banks a bedroom grate, the way the fireman on our night express fed his firebox, little, exact, and with the settled judgment of 10,000 repetitions. Behind her moves the under housemaid with the night furniture of comfort, hot water bottles, stoneware pigs, they call them, slid between sheets to warm the bed's cold provinces, washstand cans refilled, curtains drawn against the draught in the fixed folds the house prefers. A nightlight floated in its saucer of water in the nursery corridor. Room by room the upstairs world is tucked in before its owners arrive, warmed, watered, dimmed and defended, so that when the family carry their candles up at midnight, they walk into rooms that seem to have arranged themselves as if warmth were a natural property of bedrooms, as if beds warmed their own feet. 20 grates glowing under their grey quilts in 20 dark rooms, the house's own constellation, invisible, faithful, banked till morning. Below stairs, at the end of the service passage, there is a small room that smells of oil and match smoke and warm brass, and it is the light of the whole house in one place, the lamp room. Electricity exists in 1900. The newspapers are full of it, and one or two showplaces have wired themselves, but this house, like most, still runs on flame. Oil lamps in their dozens, candles by the gross, and the lamp room is where all of it is serviced. Around the walls, on scrubbed shelves, stand the house's lamps in their off-duty ranks, the tall bronze standards from the drawing room, the green-shaded reading lamps from the library, the plain tin lamps of the service quarters, each in its known place, like horses in their stalls. The odd man that is truly the title, the man of all work who belongs to no department and is therefore essential to every one, spends the first part of his evening here on the day's ending, gathering the burned-down lamps as rooms empty and preparing for tomorrow. Each lamp is his patient in turn, chimney lifted and breathed on and polished with a soft cloth until it disappears, wick examined and trimmed with scissors, straight across, for a ragged wick makes a ragged flame and a smoked chimney by 9 o'clock. The font filled from the oil jar with a steady hand, brass rubbed. The whole reassembled and set back in its place ready to be lit. 40 lamps, perhaps, pass through his hands in a day. The work asks the same virtues as the lighthouse we visited 2 episodes ago: the trimmed wick, the clean glass, the exact level of oil, practiced not on one great light, but on 40 small ones, which is harder to glory in and just as necessary. Candles are his province too. Chamber candlesticks lined up on the hall table at bedtime like little soldiers, one per person, to be carried up the great staircase in the old way, nursery night lights, the kitchen's working candles, the stubs collected and weighed, because in a great house even candle ends are property, a perquisite the odd man may sell by ancient custom. Waste not, although the house above burns in an evening what a cottage burns in a month, and both facts are true at once, and nobody below stairs finds this any stranger than weather. By 11 the lamp room is dressed for tomorrow, every lamp filled, every wick trimmed, every chimney bright, 40 small flames waiting unlit in the dark. The odd man locks the oil store. Oil is locked like wine, for fire is the great house's one true terror, and we shall feel that fear walk the corridors later tonight in the shape of a man with a lantern, hangs his apron on its nail, and goes up to his bed over the stables. The light of the house sleeps in rows on his shelves. In the service passage, high on the wall where everyone eats and no one can miss it, hangs the machine that runs the whole relationship between the two houses, the bells board. It is a long wooden case, glass-fronted in the better houses, holding a row of bells, 20 of them here, each on its own coiled spring, each labelled in painted letters for a room, drawing room, library, dining room, her ladyship's bedroom, nursery, and the rest. From each bell, a wire runs off into the walls into a hidden empire of wires, in fact, threaded through the thickness of the house on cranks and pulleys, turning corners, climbing floors, until it ends 2 or 3 rooms and 90 feet away, at a brass lever or an embroidered pull beside a fireplace. A hand upstairs draws the pull perhaps 4 inches. The wire gathers the motion, carries it down through the bones of the house, and swings the bell on its spring, and because each bell hangs on its own spring, it does not merely ring, it dances, jiggling on after the sound stops, so that a servant walking in on the end of a ring can still see which bell it was. The spring is the system's signature, sound to summon, motion to identify. Every servant in the house can name a bell by its voice alone, the way the signalman on our railway knew his block bells. The drawing room rings mellow. The nursery bell is small and quick. Her ladyship's bedroom bell has a crack in its note that 3 butlers have proposed to fix and 3 ladyships have declined, because how would anyone know her ring without it? By day the board is rarely silent for an hour, and the bell is answered. This is the standard the house sets before it has finished moving. But it is 11 o'clock now, and the board hangs still. This is the hour when the bell's silence becomes the news. The footman on late duty sits in the passage within sight of it, jacket off, polishing at some small thing by lamplight, and the stillness of 20 bells tells him everything. The family are settled. The house wants nothing. Perhaps once, near midnight, her ladyship's bedroom bell will swing hot milk, or the fire settled one soft summons floating down the wire through the sleeping walls, answered on soft souls within the minute. Then stillness again. The board is the house's pulse, and at night you read it like a nurse reads a sleeping patient. By its calm, the footman on late duty, the one sitting under the silent bells board, is worth knowing while he sits there, because the footman is the most public servant in the house and the least understood. He was hired, in the frank old way of the trade, partly by the yard. Footmen are chosen for height and matched in pairs like carriage horses, and a matched pair of 6-foot footmen is a thing a hostess mentions casually and prices privately. His workday livery is sober enough, but the full dress of state occasions still hangs in his cupboard like a captured flag. Plush breeches, striped waistcoat, silver-buttoned tailcoat, the 18th century preserved in a wardrobe, into which he must climb whenever the house entertains in form. His feet at this hour are the honest ruin of the profession. A footman's day is stairs, coal up, trays up, cans up, cards and callers and posts, down and down, 19 hours of it on marble and stone. Among themselves the footmen rate houses the way sailors rate captains, and the first question about any situation is not the wages, it is the stairs. His work is the visible work. The door answered, the table served, the carriage attended, standing behind her ladyship's chair at dinner, with a face arranged into the profession's great achievement, total presence, total absence, both at once. For this he is paid more than the maids who worked longer hours unseen, and everyone below stairs understands the injustice and the reason. He is front of house. He is, in a real sense, part of the silver display plate that walks. The trade's other famous perquisite is already dying out with the century: hair powder, the flower and pomade ritual of the old full dress, which some houses cling to and every footman loathes. He has ambitions, this one 23, sharp, saving, first footman by 25 somewhere grander, under butler by 30, then a pantry and a cellar book of his own. He is teaching himself wine from the butler's discards, sniffing the empty bottles as he carries them down, cataloguing in his head. His counterpart in the old master's time saved 18 years and took a public house with his wife, the head housemaid that was, and their coaching in is the best in the market town and takes the estate's custom still, the trade's version of a knighthood. 11:30 now. He tips his chair back to the wall, folds his arms and watches the motionless bells with eyes half shut. In the drawing room above, candles are being carried up. The last bell of the day, the library, mellow, will ring in a quarter of an hour for the tray to be cleared, and then his day, which began at 6:30, will be done. His feet throb quietly in the lamplight. The bells hang still. He would not, tonight anyway, trade with any man in England who has to buy his own coal. 2 floors above the silent bells board, at the end of its own corridor, one room in the sleeping house keeps a light burning on purpose, the night nursery. It is a room designed around smallness, low chairs, a low table, a fire screen of pierced brass, and a fire kept small and constant behind a stout guard. A night light floats in its saucer on the mantel shelf, throwing a soft ring on the ceiling that has been for 100 years of children in this room, the last thing seen at night. In the cot, the youngest child of the house, 8 months old, sleeps with the fierce commitment of the very small, and in the armchair by the fire sits nurse awake, or rather, sleeping the way mothers and sailors sleep, with the surface of her mind resting and one deep listening part of it on watch. Nurse has been with the family longer than the butler. She raised the present master, which gives her a standing in the house that fits no chart. The housekeeper governs her floor, the butler his, but nurse answers by common consent to nobody but the baby. Her room sits inside the family's own territory, on the bedroom floor, the one servant who sleeps above the baize line because her work cannot be rung for. It has to be already there. The night passes through the nursery in small weathers. At 11:30, a stirring in the cot. She is up before the cry has decided to be one, and it subsides into the general warmth of blanket and shoulder and the small circling walk that every nurse performs, a slow orbit of the firelight until the weight on her shoulder goes trusting and heavy again. At 1, the fire needs a single quiet coal, placed with tongs soundlessly. She warms milk at the hob against the 2 o'clock waking that may or may not come. This baby is a good sleeper, better than his father was, as she has told his father, who at 40 still takes the verdict meekly. Of all the night watches this series has kept, the helmsman's, the signalman's, the lighthouse keepers, this is the oldest one, older than houses. Somebody awake beside a sleeping child. It is the original of the whole idea, the watch every other watch is descended from. The great house has merely done what great houses do, taken an ancient human arrangement, given it a uniform and a room of its own, and made it someone's profession. The ring of light sways gently on the ceiling. The fire ticks behind its guard. Downstairs the bells hang silent, and up here the smallest member of the household sleeps at the exact center of the whole elaborate machine which exists. Tonight, if you trace every wire and stair and duty to its end, chiefly so that he can come down now, one last time before midnight, to the kitchen, because a great house kitchen at rest is a sight its own staff rarely stop to look at, and it rewards looking. By day, this room is a weather system, a range roaring along one wall, copper pans swinging, 6 people orbiting the great scrubbed table at speed, the cook conducting. Now it lies at anchor. The range, a black iron monument 12 feet long, with its ovens and hot plates and its own brass rail, has been raked and banked like the bedroom grates, and breathes so slowly that you must watch the chink under its door a full minute to see the red pulse there. The copper pans hang in their descending ranks on the wall, 60 of them, from a turbot kettle the size of a hip bath down to pans for 1 egg, each burnished and numbered, throwing back the last lamplight in 60 soft moons. The table is scrubbed white as bone and bare but for tomorrow's first necessities laid out under cloths, the bread sponge rising slow in its crock by the chimney where the banked warmth will nurse the yeast till morning. Listen, the room has a night voice. The long case clock in the passage, servant's time, kept 5 minutes fast by a tradition nobody will admit to starting, walks its heavy tick down the stone corridor. The range murmurs, a settle of coals soft as a sigh. Somewhere under the floor, water knocks once in a pipe and is still. The kitchen cat, black and consequential, patrols her freehold along the dresser top and takes her seat facing the larder door with the patience of her profession, for the larders are her hunting ground, and her whole excuse, mouse traps in fur, as the cook says, and worth her milk twice over. The larders open off the kitchen in a cold row, north-facing, slate-shelved. The meat larder with its hanging game, the dairy larder where cream stands in wide pans under muslin, the dry larder of flour bins and sugar loaves. All locked now, the housekeeper's keys, that other government, and all full, because a great house provisions like a ship. And the scullery beyond stands empty and wet-shining, its lead sinks drained, its plate racks full, the day's last water gurgled away. Tomorrow at 5:30, it will be the first room in the house to go to work, but that is a story for the far side of midnight. The kitchen is the house's hearth in the oldest sense, the fire that never wholly dies, the warm core everything else is built around. Cottage or castle, the arrangement is the same and always has been. Bank the fire, set the bread to rise, trust the embers till dawn. The great house has simply done it at scale, in copper and iron and slate. The lamp over the table is turned down to a bead, the cat's eyes close to slits. The range holds its slow red heart. Midnight is coming down the passage with the tick of the fast clock, and the kitchen, provisioned, banked, patrolled and warm, is as ready for it as any room in England. One more door before we go back indoors, the strangest door on the estate, half buried in the slope of the park under a clump of trees, looking for all the world like the entrance to a burial mound. It is the ice house, and inside it, in the first week of April, winter is still perfectly alive. The Victorians froze their desserts and chilled their fish long before machines made cold. They did it by harvesting winter itself. The ice house is the estate's cold cellar, a brick egg sunk 20 feet into the earth, drained at the base, entered through a short tunnel with 2 doors to trap the air between. In hard Januaries, and the January past was a hard one, to the estate's satisfaction, the whole outdoor staff turns out to the lake with poles and ice hooks and floats the winter in, cart after cart of clean block ice, tipped down into the egg, rammed and packed in layers with clean straw between, until the chamber holds 40 tons of January under the earth. Packed so and shut behind its double doors, the ice keeps a year and more. The estate is, in the old boast, never out of winter. All summer the kitchen draws on it. The odd man goes down with a lantern and a basket on hot mornings, through the 2 doors and the double hush of them, into air that stops the breath, the smell of cold straw and stone, and something like the inside of January, and chips the day's ice from the shrinking mass for the dairy, the fish, the wine coolers, and the ice creams that will appear at dinner, as if cold were as natural to July as roses. The ice house is the still room's twin when you look at it rightly. One room banks the summer in jars, the other banks the winter in blocks, and the great house, which cannot bear to be at any season's mercy, keeps both on hand the year round like a gambler holding every suit. Tonight, in the small hours of an April night, the ice house needs no watchman. The earth itself keeps this watch, 20 feet of it, steady as a cellar star. But the watchman's lantern on his 2 o'clock round pauses at the mound all the same, out of the completeness that is his whole profession, and finds the doors fast, and the frost on the grass around it lying, he would swear, a little thicker. Below his boots, in the dark, in the straw, winter sleeps like everything else on this estate, banked, counted, stored against its morning, and perfectly quiet. Past midnight, the house has one waking man left indoors, and his whole duty is a lantern and a list. In houses of this size, the fear that never sleeps is fire. Not burglars the shutters and the dogs and the bells see to them, but fire, which needs no window and picks no lock. 60 hearths, 40 lamps, 300 candles a week. Every warmth in the house is a small tamed fire, and the price of all that comfort is that somebody must walk the house at night and look at each of them, one by one. Tonight, as every night, that somebody is the night watchman, an old groom by trade, past riding now, with a soft tread, a dark lantern, and the round of the house in his legs the way the butler has it in his keys. A dark lantern is a candle lantern with a sliding shutter. Light when he wants it, darkness when he doesn't. He walks the house from bottom to top on a fixed circuit: cellars, kitchen passage, the shut ground floor rooms, the bedroom corridors, the long attics, sliding his shutter open at each hearth to read the state of the fire. The banked bedroom grates, glowing correctly behind their guards, the drawing room chimney, cooling and safe, the kitchen range breathing its slow red breath. He knows the look of a right fire, the way the wheel tapper on our railway knew the ring of a sound wheel. And he knows every wrong look too, the coal that has rolled against the fender, the guard set an inch too near the rug, the spark fallen where sparks should not be. Almost always there is nothing. The art of his round, like the art of every watch in this series, is the faithful inspection of things that are almost always fine. He carries no boots to wake the sleepers' list slippers over his stockings, and the long corridors take his weight without a creak, for he knows which boards talk and steps around them like old acquaintances. At each passage end, he pauses at the window, the park silver under a low moon, the lake a sheet of pewter, a fox crossing the lawn on business of its own. In the plate-room passage he tries the door, locked as it was last night and the 4,000 nights before. On the nursery corridor, his lantern shutter stays closed. He can hear all he needs, which is nothing, the good nothing, the nursery's ring of light steady under the door. Twice more before dawn, he will make this circuit, 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock, writing nothing, ringing nothing, needed never, necessary always. The family have not thought of him in years. He is part of what safety feels like, which is to say, invisible. On the stroke of 1, far below, the fast clock in the servants' passage tells its lie about the hour, and the watchman, passing the top of the great staircase with his shuttered lantern, is for one moment the only point of light in the whole dark house, a single candle glow crossing the landing, keeping every sleeper's fire. Step outside now, across the yard, where the night air smells of frost and hay, to the other great household of the estate, the stables. The stable block is a house in its own right, a quadrangle with a clock tower and a gilded weather vane, built by the same architect with nearly the same care, for the Victorians were entirely capable of housing their horses better than their tenants, and seeing no oddity in it. 12 horses live here, the carriage pair, the master's hunters, her ladyship's grey, the children's pony, the cob that pulls the station cart. Above the stalls, in plain rooms under the clock, live the grooms and stable lads. And coachmen and horses keep, like everyone else on this estate, their own government and their own hours. At night, the stables run on a watch as settled as the house is. Last rounds were at 10, the coachman himself walking the stalls with a lantern. Stable lanterns are caged and carried, never set down, for straw and flame keep an old enmity checking each horse as a nurse checks a ward. A hand along a leg to read its heat, the water buckets topped, hay racks filled for the small hours, because a horse's stomach, like a baby's, keeps no gentleman's hours. The grey, who is delicate, gets her rug adjusted. The pony, who is a thief, gets the bolt on his door checked twice. He has learned doors the way some prisoners learn locks, and the whole yard is proud of him and pretends not to be. Now the yard is dark and the block breathes. Stand in the aisle a moment and listen. 12 big animals easing through the night, the shift of a hoof in deep straw, a long blown-out breath, the creak of a headstall, teeth working at hay in the dark, slow as a mill. A horse asleep standing, weight slung in its own architecture, ears still faintly on duty. The stable cat, the kitchen cat's rival and by treaty never her guest, flows along a beam. One lad sleeps tonight in the sick box with a lamp turned low, not for illness but for company. The wheeler of the carriage pair is old, and lately he frets at night, and a boy asleep in the straw beside him settles him better than any drench. Nobody ordered this, the boy asked, and the coachman, a hard man by daylight, said, 1 night only, and has said 1 night only for 11 nights now. The clock over the arch strikes 1, a half-beat behind the house. The 2 clocks have disagreed for 30 years, and their quarrel is part of the estate's fabric now, like the yew hedges. Frost thickens on the cobbles. In the harness room, soap-shined leather hangs in black ranks. Brass winks by the light of the one lamp kept burning there, before the framed portrait photograph of a horse 30 years dead, the great mare of the old master's time, still presiding. The stables sleep as the house sleeps, banked, watched, provisioned and warm at the core. Across the yard from the stables, one more outbuilding stands dark tonight, but expectantly dark, like a theatre on Sunday, the laundry. For today is Sunday night, and in the deep grammar of English households, Sunday night is the eve of the week's one immovable feast. Tomorrow is washing day. The laundry is its own small factory, and its 3 laundry maids rank as a separate tribe below stairs, famously independent, famously strong-armed, holders of the house's most ancient female profession. Their kingdom is 2 rooms, the wash-house, with its coppers and tubs, and the long dollies and possers standing in the corner, like a rack of blunt weapons. And the drying and ironing room beyond, where clotheslines run on pulleys under the ceiling and a cast-iron stove waits, ringed with its family of flat irons, each size to its work, from the great goose for sheets down to little fluters for frills. Tonight the wash-house holds its breath. The head laundry maid came out after chapel this evening and laid the copper fire ready paper, kindling coal, one match wanting, the same architecture as every other banked beginning in this episode, and filled the copper itself, 40 gallons, because tomorrow starts at 4:30 and the water must be boiling by 6. The week's linen stands sorted in wicker mountains, sheets and pillow slips from the whole bedroom floor, tablecloths, the aprons and caps of every servant in the house. Her ladyship's fine things set apart in their own basket like aristocracy, even in the wash. Soap is cut in bars on the shelf. The blue bag hangs by the rinsing tub. Starch waits in its crock. Tomorrow this room will be steam and slap and strong arms from 4:30 till dusk. Monday wash, Tuesday dry, Wednesday iron. The week's slow procession toward the linen room, where the housekeeper receives the finished snow into her shelves by count. Country laundries measure themselves against one boast. A great house washes everything, owns enough linen to change everything, and is never ever seen to be washing. The drying grounds are walled for exactly that modesty, acres of white flapping like a fleet's sails on a Tuesday, and all of it invisible from every window the family uses. But that is tomorrow. Tonight the copper sits full and cold with its fire laid. The irons stand cold on their stove, the mountains of linen wait in the dark, and the whole industrious room sleeps like its maids on the eve, ready, one match from Monday. Even the estate's rhythms, you see, keep the shape of this episode. Everything in this world is a banked fire. Everything is laid overnight, so that morning is nothing but a lighting back through the yard door. In the heart of the basement, one door stands ajar with lamplight behind it long after midnight, and it belongs to the most powerful woman on the estate, the housekeeper. Her room is the parlour of the invisible house, carpeted, curtained, a fire of its own, china in a corner cupboard that is hers and not the house's, and a great desk with pigeonholes where the accounts of the entire domestic kingdom come home to roost. She is called Mrs. by immemorial custom, though she has never married. The office itself is the marriage. From the chatelaine at her waist hangs the answer to every locked door below stairs, but the butler's too. Still room, linen room, china closet, the larders, the storerooms with their tea and sugar and soap and wax. Every consumable thing the house contains is under her key, entered in her books, and spent by her judgment. Tonight she is at the desk late, as she is every month's end, with the ledgers open in the lamplight. The household accounts of a great house are a serious literature. The butcher's book, the grocer's book, wages, the linen inventory, candles by the pound and tea by the caddy, every column marching down to totals a London merchant would respect. She writes a fine, steady hand, and she is exact the way the butler is exact, not from fear, but because exactness is the dignity of the office. Between entries, she keeps her other ledger, the unwritten one, the second housemaid ready for promotion at the quarter, the kitchen maid whose mother is ill and who should be given the Sunday, the undergardener and his vegetables at the kitchen door, an affair conducted at the pace of a glacier and observed by the entire staff, with the attention London gives a royal engagement. She rose at 6:30 this morning. She will rise at 6:30 tomorrow. In between she has governed provisioning, cleaning, linen, staff, and peace among 25 people who live and work at close quarters 14 hours a day, governed it so well that the house above believes it governs itself. That is the peculiar art of her profession. Perfect government, perfectly hidden. At 1:30 she blots the page, closes the ledger, and stands a moment at the dying fire, with her tea gone cold on the desk, hearing what she listens for last thing every night. Nothing. The good nothing. The house in order. She turns down the lamp and goes up the back stairs with her candle, and the last office of the invisible house goes dark. The house is all sleepers and watchmen now, so this is the hour for a story. And the story every servant of this house tells a newcomer first is the night of the coming-of-age ball. 3 summers past, 400 guests, every room in the house open and lit, the gallery cleared for dancing, supper for all of them at midnight. For the family it was one radiant night. For below stairs it was a campaign, planned like one for 6 weeks. London caterers to reinforce the kitchen, hired footmen drilled by the butler until they walked like the house's own, the plate room emptied to its last salver, 300 extra candles, and the lamp room working like a small gasworks. The maids were up at 4 that morning. Nobody below stairs saw bed before 5 the next. What the staff remember is not the grandeur is their trade, but the mechanics at full stretch, the house driven like our racing express. The relay of trays up the back stairs, hot to cold to hot again, service running so fast the baize door never fully closed for 6 hours, swinging its held-breath hush over and over like a slow drum. The bells bored with 5 bells dancing at once at 2 in the morning, the head footman meeting each crisis a torn flounce, a fainting dowager, an empty champagne tub, with the unhurried walk that is the whole art of footmanship, because in a great house no emergency is permitted to look like one. And at 3 o'clock, the long line of carriages on the drive, lamps burning down the avenue like a procession of small lighthouses, wheels on gravel fading pair by pair into the summer dark. And then this is the part they tell slowest. When the last carriage had gone and the family were upstairs, the cook sent up word that there was supper in the servants' hall. The surviving lobster patties, the unserved cream, champagne that would not keep. And the whole staff, hired men and all, sat down at 4 in the morning in their shirt sleeves among the wreckage of their triumph, and ate the ball's leftovers by candle ends, too tired to talk, entirely content. The scullery maid, she is head kitchen maid now, fell asleep at the table with a spoon in her hand, and the butler himself carried her chair back so a footman could carry her up to the attics. And it is agreed by everyone that no honour done to any guest that night was greater. The house holds that ball the way a hull holds a great storm it once came through. Tonight's quiet is measured against it. Every ship's company keeps one such story. Every lighthouse has its hurricane. Every signal box its fog of fogs. Below stairs keeps the ball the night the machine ran flat out till dawn, and carried everything, and sat down after, and ate the cream. Since the house is asleep and we are being honest tonight, let us open respectfully, and only in the way a story can, the tin trunk under the attic bed, because everything a servant truly owns is in it, and it explains this world better than any wage book. Take the second, housemaids, since we already know her candle. On top, the Sunday dress her own, not uniform, for chapel and the monthly afternoon out. Beneath, a workbox with thread and her good scissors, a Bible from the vicar's wife with her name in it, given the day she left the village, a bundle of letters from her mother, one a fortnight for 4 years, tied in tape, a photograph of the family cottage with everyone standing very straight in front of it, and, wrapped in flannel at the bottom, her bank book. That small book is the plot of her life. £8 a year became 11 when she was promoted. She sends her mother a share half yearly, keeps back little, banks the rest at the post office in the market town, and the column has climbed in 4 years to £19, which is to say, a future. A future is precisely what the box is for. What do they save toward? The sleepers on this corridor, the maids mostly. Toward marriage, the settled arithmetic of service is that a girl banks her wages until a steady man asks, and the undergardener's vegetables at the kitchen door are, in this accounting, a courtship conducted in produce and patience. Some save toward a shop, a lodging house, a passage to a brother in Canada. The footman, as we know, saves toward a cellar book of his own. And some, the housekeeper was one, 30 years ago saved toward nothing but the saving, until the profession itself becomes the life, and the keys become the family, and the house, in its unsentimental way, becomes home. And whether that is a warm story or a cold one depends on the evening you ask her, and she would tell you crisply that it is no one's story but hers. Board, bed, beer, wages banked, a character earned, a box slowly filling, those are the terms. Set against them, the hours, the rules, the bells, the long stairs, a life lived in someone else's house at someone else's ring. Nobody on this corridor signed blind, and nobody's mother did either. The century coming, the one that is 4 months old tonight, will offer these families other doors. Shops, offices, factories, typewriters, and service will empty out within 2 generations, quietly, cottage by cottage, which is its own verdict on the bargain. But tonight the bargain holds, the boxes are packed with futures, and the corridor sleeps on its savings, every trunk a small banked fire of intentions, waiting, like everything else in this house, for its morning. Climb the last flight of the service stairs, now plain wood, scrubbed pale, worn to a shine in the middle of every tread to the floor the family never visits. The attics, where the invisible house sleeps. The corridor runs the length of the roof, lit at this hour by one turned-down lamp at the far end. Doors on both sides, each with its painted number and its sleeping servant behind it. Maids on the east side, men on the west, with the housekeepers and butlers' rooms below, like garrisons commanding the stairs, for the segregation of the attic floor is policed with a rigor the family below never has to think about, and the head housemaid could tell you the sound of every door in the corridor from her bed. The rooms are plain and small under the slope of the leads. An iron bedstead, a washstand, a deal chest, a strip of drugget on bare boards, a text or a print on the whitewash bless this house in cross-stitch, worked by a maid long since married and gone. A tin trunk under each bed holds everything its owner owns that the house did not issue. Cold in winter, hot under summer leads. The water in the washstand jugs will have a skin of ice on it by February mornings. And yet the maids sleep two to a room by choice as much as custom, for company. There is a fireplace for illness. The beds are sound and the blankets the house's own good wool. Half the girls on this corridor grew up sleeping 4 to a bed in a cottage loft. Service drives hard bargains, but it keeps them. The room is small and the roof over it is very large, and both truths climb the stairs together every night. Listen down the corridor. Deep breathing behind the numbered doors, a bed's iron creak. Wind working at the leads and finding nothing loose, for the estate carpenter also sleeps on this floor and takes wind personally. From the second housemaid's room, the faint scratch of a match and a moment's candle she is reading, which is against the rules at this hour, a novelette bought with her own penny in the village, and the head housemaid, passing to her own bed and seeing the thread of light under the door, elects, as she elects most nights, not to see it. Rules are the skeleton of a house, mercy is its breath. A good head housemaid knows the dose of each. At the corridor's end, a small window looks down the whole dark length of the estate, the roofs of the stables, the glasshouses glinting faint under the moon, the park, the lodge lights far off at the gates. The people asleep on this floor keep all of it. In 6 hours the corridor will fill with candlelight and pinned-up hair and the day's first footsteps on the stairs. But now the attic floor lies quiet over the sleeping house like a lid over a banked fire the keepers kept, the watchers watched over. 25 tired professionals of comfort-taking, at last their own share of the thing they manufacture. Far down the dark garden past the yew-walks, a row of glass roofs holds the starlight, and inside them All night, summer is being defended by lamplight. The glasshouses are the estate's tropics, a vinery where the grapes hang in blue-black chandeliers, a peach house trained flat against warm brick, pits of melons and pines, for a great house of this rank grows pineapples, has grown them since the old master's day, and the head gardener would resign over a bought pineapple as a butler would resign over hired silver. All of it lives or dies by heat, and the heat is fire. A boiler at the back wall stoked with coke, driving hot water through iron pipes that run under the beds like a buried summer, and so the gardens too keep a night watch. The journeyman gardener on boiler duty comes down at 2 o'clock with a storm lantern, crunching the frost-stiff gravel, the only footsteps on the whole estate at this hour that don't apologize for themselves. He rakes the firebox, feeds it, checks the damper against the hardening frost. The pipes tick and swell faintly along their runs like a ship's hull warming. Then the round of the houses with the lantern held high, the thermometer in the vinery read by flame light steady, the peach house steady, the pine pit warmest and fussiest, its plunge bed of tanner's bark, breathing its own slow fermented heat around the pots steady. His lantern moves down the glass ranges from outside like a slow yellow fish in a dark aquarium, and the vines throw moving shadows on the whitewashed wall. And nothing is wrong tonight. Nothing is ever very wrong on a well-kept estate, which is the entire art of everyone in this episode. He stops a minute before going back to bed. They all stop a minute, the night workers of this story. It is the wage never mentions, and stands in the vinery's mild dark. Frost on the world outside the glass, June inside it. Grapes ripening by starlight in January's teeth, on fire carried through pipes, watched by one man with a lantern, while the family who will eat them sleep 300 yards away and have never once seen this room at night. Somewhere a pipe knocks softly. The boiler draws. Summer holds beyond the glasshouses, where the gardens give way to fields. One more establishment keeps the estate's earliest hours, the home farm, and at 4:30, before even the scullery maid's alarm, its lanterns are already crossing the yard. The home farm feeds the house. Its dairy, its poultry yard, its orchards and pigsties supply what the larders hold. And the farm's day is set not by any human timetable, but by the oldest clock on the estate, the cows. 6 milkers stand in the byre, and cows must be milked at dawn and dusk, Sunday and Christmas, ball night and morning alike. No institution in England, church included, keeps its offices so absolutely. The cowman and his boy work down the row by lantern light, heads pressed to warm flanks, the milk ringing in the pails in that 2-note rhythm, the first steady work sound of the estate's whole day, earlier even than the kitchen's first match. The milk goes steaming across to the dairy, and the dairy is the farm's chapel, cool, tiled, scoured, north-facing, ruled by the dairymaid with a strictness the housekeeper herself respects. Broad, shallow pans receive the milk to stand for cream. Yesterday's cream waits for the week's churning. Butter from Friday sits wrapped in its own stamped pats, the estate's crest pressed into every half-pound, because even butter here wears livery. The dairymaid scolds and scours by ritual law. Dairies live and die by cleanliness, and hers could pass a surgeon's inspection, and has passed her own, which is stricter, every day for 9 years. By 5, the poultry boy is at the hen houses, and the pig man is carrying the kitchens yesterday to the sties. The estate wastes nothing. The great house's scraps return as next season's bacon in the oldest of all agricultural economies. By 6, the first barrow of the day is rolling up the kitchen garden path to the house. Milk, cream, butter, eggs still warm, the morning's vegetables lifted dark with dew, the daily tribute of the outer estate to the inner, time to arrive as the kitchen reaches full song. Cook receives it at the door in person, for the quality of the morning barrow is a treaty between 2 sovereign powers, negotiated daily and mostly at peace. So when the breakfast trays go up at 8, understand what rides on them. The cows milked in the dark, the dairy's cold discipline, the hens, the barrow, the garden, a whole outdoor parliament of early risers, none of whom the family will ever see, all present in a jug of cream. The estate is one body, and at night you can watch it breathe as one. Glasshouse boiler, bar lantern, kitchen range, 3 fires in a line across the dark park, keeping 3 kinds of warmth, for one purpose, which is morning. There is one more room to visit while the house sleeps, and it is the sweetest smelling room below stairs, the still room, the housekeeper's private kingdom of preserves and cordials, and the closest thing the house has to a memory you can eat. It is a small, neat kitchen that dash is dash, not dash the dash kitchen. Its own little range, copper preserving pans in sizes down to a teacup, and shelves rising to the ceiling, loaded with the year in glass. Strawberry and raspberry from June, the great marmalade making of January, 40 pounds at a boiling, damson cheese in shallow moulds, bottled plums like lamplight in jars, the quince jelly that is sent up only when the old ladyship visits because it was her mother's receipt, vinegars, cordials, elderflower and blackcurrant against winter colds, lavender bags for the linen room, the rose petal potpourri that gives the drawing room the particular breath every guest remarks on and no one can place. Every jar is labelled in the housekeeper's fine hand and dated, and the shelves read like a diary kept in fruit. The still room work happens in the quiet hours of the afternoon, but its meaning belongs to the night, because this room is where the house lays time itself down in store, where June is banked like a fire, to be opened in December. The receipt book on the shelf is the oldest working document in the house, leather-bound, food-spotted, a century and a half of housekeepers' hands in it, receipts crossed out and amended and initialed, an argument about seed cake conducted across 4 generations of dead women in 4 inks. The present housekeeper adds her own emendations in pencil, tentatively, as one speaks in a room full of elders. When she retires, she will hand the book to her successor, as it was handed to her, and that handing more than the keys, more than the chatelaine, is the true investiture. At night, the still room stands locked and fragrant in the dark, sugar and lavender and warm spice held behind its door like a cord. The kitchen cat on her rounds pauses at the door crack, reads the news of it, and passes on nothing for her there. The mice agree with the housekeeper about the still room and keep clear, and the year sleeps on the shelves in rows. The sunlight of last summer, jarred and labelled and waiting, patient as everything else in this house, for some morning to be wanted. At 5 o'clock, in the numbered attic dark, an alarm clock with a cracked bell goes off under a pillow, where it was smothered against waking the room next door, and the youngest servant in the house sits up in the cold, the scullery maid, 13 years old, 11 weeks in service, first up in the whole establishment. The day belongs to her before it belongs to anyone in England. She dresses by candle in clothes gone stiff with cold, splashes her face ice skin on the jug, as promised pins her cap by feel, and goes down 5 flights of dark service stairs with her candle, past the sleeping doors, through the sleeping passages, into the kitchen where the cat rises to meet her like a committee of one. Her first duty is the great one, the range. She rakes out the night's ash, the banked core still winking red. Old fire handed forward like the token on our Highland Railway, lays her kindling with the economy of practice and strikes the day's first match. The flame walks the wood, takes the coal and steadies, and that small sound, the first fire drawing in the iron throat of the range, is the actual beginning of the great house's day, whatever the clocks upstairs believe. Everything that will happen above stairs today, the hot water, the breakfast, the warmth in every room, descends from this kneeling girl and her match. Then the kettles go on, the big kettles, for the whole morning turns on hot water, and while they climb toward boiling, she scrubs the kitchen table and swills the flags, working in the growing warmth with the cat supervising from the dresser. She is not sorry for herself, whatever we might be on her behalf. She is proud, fierce, and half asleep in roughly equal parts. Proud because the range is hers and it is drawing well. Fierce because the kitchen maid will be down in half an hour to find fault and had better find none. Her mother put her to service with one sentence: be first up and last complaining, and you'll do, and she is doing. By 5:30, doors are opening high in the house. The housemaids come down yawning with their boxes of brushes and blacklead. The hall boy staggers past with coal scuttles. The kitchen maid arrives, inspects the range, and finds nothing, the good nothing, the fire perfect. She does not say so. In the grammar of below stairs, silence is the highest praise there is. The scullery maid, 13, first up, unthanked and entirely victorious, wipes her hands and gets on. Above their heads 5 people sleep on in warming rooms, and the whole machine that keeps them sleeping is coming quietly, competently, irresistibly awake. 6 o'clock, and the housemaids are moving through the shut ground floor rooms in the grey half-light, performing the morning's most invisible magic, the resurrection of the fires. Each maid carries her housemaid's box, a wooden tray with a handle, holding brushes, blacklead, emery paper, cloths, and a tinder of kindling, and each has her rooms worked in a fixed order. Family rooms first, so they are done and aired long before any family appears. In the drawing room she kneels at the grate she banked last night or its cold cousin. For the ground floor fires are let die and rebuilt daily, and takes it apart like a watchmaker. Ashes riddled and carried out, the grate blackleaded and buffed until the iron shows a soft graphite shine, the hearth whitened at its edges, and then the fire itself laid new, paper, kindling crossed just so, coals graded small to large, the whole architecture ready for one match at the family's first bell. A good housemaid lays a fire that lights in one match every time. It is her signature, as the one-match range is the scullery maid's. Around the fire, the room is put back to innocence. Dust sheets whisked from the furniture and folded away. Carpets swept to freshen the pile. Yesterday's flowers taken down to the garden door. The windows opened a hand's breadth to change the air and closed again before the chill can settle. The maid works in list slippers, fast and silent, by the strengthening window light. Lamps are done with now, dawn is free, and the house uses it, and when she backs out of the drawing room with her box, the room holds no evidence that any human hand has touched it, ever. That is the standard, not cleanliness merely, but the appearance of effortlessness. Rooms that seem to keep themselves, fires that seem to have offered to be lit. The family will come down at 9 to find every room warm, aired, flowered and composed, and will not think about it, and are not meant to think about it. Meanwhile, the maids move on room by room ahead of the family's day like the pilot engine that ran ahead of royalty on our railway, always one room ahead, always unseen, sweeping the way clear. By 7 the ground floor is done, and they are up the back stairs to begin on the bedroom's outer works, and the first smell of the house's morning beeswax, fresh kindling smoke, cold garden air is rising through the staircases like a change of weather. 8 o'clock, and the night ends the way it began, with a procession through the baize door, but upward now and loaded with morning. The kitchen has been at full song for an hour, bacon and kidneys underway for the dining room breakfast at 9, bread out of the oven, the cook back at her post issuing the day's first judgments, and now the great morning ritual of the bells begins. Her ladyship's bell first, as always the cracked note, dancing on its spring, and up goes her tray, carried by the head housemaid. Tea in the small silver pot, thin bread and butter, 1 flower from the glasshouses in a bud vase. The curtains then drawn back on the park in its morning mist. The master's hot water follows, brought by the footman with the can wrapped in a towel. Then the children's nursery breakfast, porridge and honey, up all those stairs, steady as a token exchange. then hot water jugs down the whole bedroom corridor, set steaming at each washstand, with a knock and a murmur, stand at the foot of the back stairs and watch the machine at its morning full. Maids and footmen passing each other in the narrow flights with loaded trays and empty cans, timed to a private rhythm that never collides. The baize door swinging its hush, open and shut, the bells bored dancing 3 at a time, and every bell answered before it stills. The two houses, which all night touched only at the watchman's soft rounds, are meshing again like gears taking up the drive, and meshing so smoothly that upstairs, where the day arrives as tea and hot water and drawn curtains, it feels not like machinery at all, but like morning itself, personally delivered. And that is the sleight of hand the whole night existed to perform. The banked fires, the counted silver, the trimmed lamps, the watchman's 3 rounds, the nurse's orbit of the firelight, the boiler fed at 2, the range lit at 5, the fires laid at 6, all of it disappears now into one impression. A warm house waking easily. The family will never see the night we have just spent. That was the arrangement, that was the profession. Below stairs would have it no other way, for visible effort is failed effort in this trade. The morning trays are the night's only monument. Tea, steam, a flower in a bud vase, and they are carried up and set down and drunk and forgotten by 9:10. And that was the servants' night, one turning of one great house, in the year 1900. There will be another tonight. There was another every night. The same keys, the same banked fires, the same lantern crossing the same dark landing, in this house and 10,000 houses like it, for the better part of 2 centuries. The world that kept those nights is gone now, gone into pensions and plumbing and electric light, and few of the people who kept them would trade their granddaughters' lives for their own. But something in the arrangement itself was older than the houses and outlives them. That sleep is a thing people keep for each other, that someone banks the fire, that someone counts the spoons and tries the doors, that someone sits within earshot of the child. The great house merely gathered all those ancient kindnesses under one roof and gave them uniforms, and for one night, from the inside, we have seen what it looked like when a whole small nation stayed awake in shifts, so that a handful of sleepers never once felt the cold. Wherever tonight finds you, the same offices are being kept. Doors you did not lock are locked. Lights you did not trim are burning where they are needed. Somewhere below your window, so to speak, a kitchen is banked and ticking, and a kettle is set ready for a morning that will arrive without your help. The house of the world is watched. You are, in the oldest and best sense of the word, served. The fire is banked. The bells are still. The trays will come up in the morning. Sleep well. The fires are banked, every one of them. The watchman is on his round. Nothing stirs. The bells hang still. The house wants nothing. The kettle is set for morning. You can let go now.